Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about the future of competitive disc golf and if it's as bright as it may seem. Now, as a disc golf store owner and fellow competitive disc golfer, I'm kind of really interested in this to see if in 10 years our sport is significantly bigger than it is today, if it stays the same, or if it's just an afterthought. And to answer questions about the future of this sport, I kind of needed to look at the data from the past. The data I used in this video comes from PDGA Player Statistics, which is just a website anyone can access. And it holds information dating back to 1974. You could see how much money people earned, how many events they played, their PDGA number obviously, where they're from, what division they played, and even their PDGA rating. And in this video, I wanted to take a snapshot of just the last 10 years of our sport and see how much it's grown since then. And so I took data from the years 2014, 2019, and most recently 2024. And for each of these years, I took two key metrics. I looked at players' PDGA player ratings, and I looked at how much money they make. And the reason I looked at players' PDGA ratings is because it's one of the few metrics that our sport uses to determine how competitive or how good of a disc golfer you are. So similar to golf where you have a handicap, for us it's a player rating. And although it's not a perfect system, it's one of the few ways I can measure competitiveness on the Pro Tour and off the Pro Tour. I could have looked at results and point standings of how players finished on the Pro Tour, but I figured to make it more simple, I would just look at players' ratings. From each of these years, I looked at the number of 1,030 rated players, the number of 1,020 rated players, and the number of players that earned more than 20,000 in a year. If we look at the trends for the number of 1,000 rated PDGA members over time, in 2014, there were 18 of them. In 2019, there were 20 of them. And in 2024, there was 36,030 rated players. Over the last 10 years, the number of upper echelon players, the best of the best in our sport, has doubled. Now moving on to the number of 1,020 PDGA members over time. In 2014, there were 35. In 2019, there were 62. And most recently, in 2024, there were 99. So nearly tripled in terms of 1,020 rated members, PDGA members. And lastly, I looked at the number of PDGA members that earned over $20,000 that year. So that is the gross amount earned at events played. And so that doesn't take into account the costs that went in. So the food, the travel, the entry fees for each of those events. And obviously it also doesn't take into account the amount of money players earned from contracts, from other sponsorship opportunities. But in 2014, the number of players that earned over $20,000 from events was 6. In 2019, it was 15. And in 2024, it was 41. Obviously, after looking at all these metrics, you can clearly see that the competitiveness or the PDGA player rating has gone up over time significantly, and the amount of money earned over time has gone up significantly as well. Now, if you dive deeper into how much the top players made each of those years, I took stats from the top 6 players that had the most earnings that year and kind of compared them across those 3 time segments as well. In 2014, the top 6 earners for that year include Ricky Wysocki, Paul McBeth, Paul Ulibarri, Will Shoestrick, Johnny McRae, and Jeremy Colling, with everyone earning over $20,000, and Paul McBeth and Ricky Wysocki earning over $40,000. In 2019, the top 6 players were Paul McBeth, Ricky Wysocki, Eagle McMahon, James Conrad, Calvin Heimberg, and Chris Dickerson, with each of these players earning more than $34,000. Eagle McMahon, Ricky, and Paul earning over $40,000, with Paul McBeth earning $57,000. In 2024, the top 6 players were Gan Burr, Ricky Wysocki, Calvin Heimberg, Niklas Antila, Anthony Barella, and Isaac Robinson, with all of these players earning over $86,000. Calvin Heimberg, Ricky Wysocki earning over $100,000, and Gannon Burr, obviously with his historic season, with the most money earned in a year. He earned $211,432. Clearly, based on this information, we can see that not only has the competitiveness of the sport grown, the money has also grown as well. Based on this information, you may think that our sport is trending in the right direction. As long as we continue on this trend of competitiveness and the amount of money that's brought into this sport, that we are looking at a bright future. However, based on recent news, this may not look as bright as it may seem. Recently, this offseason in 2024 and now in 2025, a lot of players have announced what manufacturers they're going to be representing this year, what sponsors they may have. Based on other disc golf YouTubers and other people that publish disc golf news, it seems like some players may not be going on tour or going on a full tour this year. And so that list of players you may already know, and you may wonder why. Also, I forgot to put in this important part. I just realized this while I was editing. But since these top guys aren't actually making as much money as they were in the past, the guys that are 15th best in the world and worse most likely don't have the funds to be able to go on a full tour because they don't have the money. They don't have the contracts. And since if they're finishing 15th place on tour, the cash isn't actually that good. They probably just break even. So, or even lose money in some cases. So a lot of these guys are choosing not to go on tour. And I don't know why I didn't talk about that, but let's get back in the video. A large portion of this can be due to a few things. Number one, disc golf manufacturers aren't actually making that much money. Obviously, COVID was a major reason for a huge boom in our sport. And so that large influx of people playing and buying more discs led to disc golf manufacturers giving out inflated contracts or don't reflect the money that is in the disc golf scene today. A lot of these players that have not been re-signed are either unable to find another contract or they have to settle for a much smaller contract. Obviously, not every single disc golf manufacturer's contract is public, but if you even look at Isaac Robinson's recent signing of $175,000 a year with Latitude 64, congratulations to him. It is obviously much smaller than you would think. If you look at guys like Simon Lizotte, at Ricky Wysocki, at Paul Macbeth, they make around $1 million a year. You would think that based on other contracts and how the sport is progressing, you would expect the world champion and other disc golfers in that upper echelon tier to make more money. Obviously, this isn't the case. As I mentioned before, there are a few reasons why this may be. Number one, disc golf manufacturers aren't actually selling enough discs to support bigger contracts. Two, these professional players aren't doing enough or selling enough discs for each of these disc golf manufacturers. Or three, disc golf is just not as big as it may seem, and it's kind of at this level that it is now. During COVID, it had this big surge of players that started playing, a lot of more money. Maybe it's just dropped a little bit and now it's leveling off to where it needs to be. So based on this information, what do I think the future of disc golf holds? I'm not really too sure. If I were to give my opinion, I'm thinking that the competitiveness of disc golf is still going to rise. I think in recent years, there's been this huge influx of players that want to play professionally, that want to make a living playing disc golf. And this influx obviously has led to players playing a lot of tournaments. You can see that the number of 1,020 rated players has tripled in the last 10 years, and the number of 1,030 rated players has doubled in the last 10 years. Since there isn't that much money in the sport right now, as it may seem, I think the total volume of players that are competitive and want to make a living as a disc golfer will drop over the next few years. However, I think the competitiveness and the competition of those upper echelon players, those 1,030 rated plus players, and the young up-and-comers, I feel like the competitiveness of those players will increase significantly to where these players are going to show us that they are professional level players. They do this for a living. They train their butts off in order to make a living. So it'll make this sport much more competitive. It won't be as easy to get into these pro tour events, and it won't be as easy to cash in these events. And I think this will happen. However, this competitiveness, this drive to become professional disc golfers, professional players, is only allowable based on the amount of money that's in the sport. So I feel that these next few years are critical for our sport. And if we want to see highly competitive disc golf, or if you want to become a competitive disc golfer, some things might have to change. And I think there are two main things that I wanted to talk about that directly tie to the future of this sport and how this sport can be significantly bigger in the next 10 years. Number one, I think more youth have to be involved in disc golf. I think the average age of a disc golfer is much higher comparative to many other sports, and that is due to disc golf not being as popular as many other sports. If you go look at high school sports, middle school sports in the US, main sports that come to mind include American football, basketball, volleyball, baseball, even hockey is a major league sport in America. And since there's no disc golf being introduced to these kids at a young age, I feel like the amount of money in the sport is much lower than it could be. To get back to my point, I think we need more youth on the course. We need people in elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools to have clubs, or if not, full-on sports disc golf teams. From this, we could build competitiveness. We can have more people playing at a younger age, and obviously just increase the amount of not only money in the sport, but the competitiveness of the sport. And number two, the only other thing I think we can do to boost the level of the sport is for the Disc Golf Pro Tour to continue and try to reach new heights with sponsors outside of the sport. We have tons of disc golf manufacturers and tons of disc golf related companies sponsor plenty of Disc Golf Pro Tour events, Play It Again Sports, Discraft, so on and so forth, MVP Open and OTB Open. I feel like for us to reach new heights, we need multi-million-dollar companies to sponsor these events, to see that disc golf is a valuable sport, and hopefully bring just more money into the sport for players to be able to compete as professional disc golfers. And so based on that, I think those are the two ways that we can become, that competitive disc golf can flourish in the future. I'd be curious to see if you guys think there's any other ways to improve the sport of disc golf and hopefully grow the sport to be a much more major sport than it is now. So that kind of concludes my video. To answer my question, is the future of disc golf as bright as it may seem? I think it is. As a disc golf store owner, I'm surrounded by lots of people that play disc golf. I could see that there is a younger generation that is starting to play. And I think if this continues to happen, that this sport is going in the right direction. Besides that, that basically concludes my video. I appreciate you guys watching. If you guys have watched this far, I'd be curious to see if you guys have any input. If you guys think that the sport of disc golf is also trending in a positive direction, or is it not? Is there things we can do that I didn't mention in this video? I'd love to hear it in the comments below. Yeah, but besides that, I appreciate you guys all for watching. If you guys can like and subscribe. These past few months have been great. I appreciate all the support, and hopefully I'll be making a lot more videos like this soon. But yeah, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks.